It has been a long, rough offseason if you're a Washington Commanders fan trying to defend your quarterback on the internet. Every ranking, every list, every hot take show has spent the last several months burying Jayden Daniels somewhere in the middle of the pack, treating him like a guy who got lucky for one season and is about to come crashing back to earth. And then, out of nowhere, buried in an Instagram scroll on an otherwise ordinary Monday, one post changed the whole conversation. ESPN dropped a piece asking a deceptively simple question about the league's top quarterbacks. How many first-round draft picks would you actually give up to acquire each one of them? And when the names started rolling in, Commanders fans finally got the receipt they've been waiting for all offseason. Let's set the scene properly, because this wasn't some random blogger with a hot take account. This came from Bill Barnwell, one of the most respected, most widely read football writers working for ESPN today, a guy who has built his entire reputation on rigorous, data-informed analysis rather than clickbait nonsense. When a name like that puts a number next to a quarterback, people pay attention, and rightfully so. So when this list started making its way through NFL Twitter and Instagram, it carried real weight, not just vibes. The list kicked off exactly where you'd expect. Josh Allen sitting at the very top, valued at 7 first-round picks. That's an eye-popping number even by modern quarterback valuation standards, but nobody's arguing Allen doesn't belong in the conversation for best player in football. From there, though, things get a little more interesting. Lamar Jackson, fresh off yet another dominant season, comes in at just 2 first-round picks. Now that's a number that raises an eyebrow. If Allen is worth 7, it's hard to justify Jackson sitting at only 2, especially given the URSM Jackson has built over the last several years. Joe Burrow lands at 4 picks, which feels like a fair, defensible number given everything he's done in Cincinnati. Then you get to Jalen Hurts, and this is where things start to get spicy for anyone who follows the NFC East closely. Hurts checks in at just 1 first-round pick. And look, plenty of Commanders fans have had strong opinions about Hurts for years now. The argument that his surrounding cast and defense have done more heavy lifting than people give credit for. A number like 1 first-round pick from a national outlet like ESPN validates a lot of that skepticism. Even if you'd bump it up to 2 out of fairness for his actual production and playoff success. But none of that is really the headline here. The headline, the entire reason this list matters to anyone reading this right now, comes a few names later, when Jayden Daniels shows up on the board. And ESPN didn't bury him. They didn't hedge. They put a real number next to his name, 3 first-round picks. 3, let that sink in for a second, because context is everything with a number like that. Jalen Hurts, a starting quarterback who has been to a Super Bowl, checks in at just 1 pick. And Jayden Daniels, a second-year player who missed real time due to injury last season, comes in 3 picks higher. That is not a small gap. That is a massive statement about how at least one of the most respected analytical voices in the entire football media landscape views the ceiling on this kid. And here's why this hits different for Commanders fans specifically. This offseason has been an absolute onslaught of negativity surrounding this football team, and specifically surrounding Daniels. Every single national conversation seems to gloss right past the actual context of what happened last year. People talk about him getting hurt like it's some kind of permanent red flag, completely ignoring the fact that the entire roster around him was dealing with injuries all year long. Nobody's talking about the fact that Deebo Samuel is no longer walking through that door, changing the weapon room entirely. Nobody's talking about the additions this team quietly made. Guys like Leo Chenal coming in to add juice to that defense, or a rookie like Sonny Styles getting drafted into the mix. None of that gets airtime. All anyone wants to talk about is Daniels missing time and whether last year's magic was a fluke. So when a heavyweight name like Bill Barnwell puts out a number that essentially says Jayden Daniels is more valuable than Jalen Hurts, more valuable than a Super Bowl quarterback, it lands like a gut punch to every hater who has spent the summer writing this kid off. And to be clear, this isn't about disrespecting Hurts as a competitor or a winner. This is about recognizing exactly what kind of ceiling Daniels flashed back in 2024. Remember what that rookie season actually looked like. This wasn't a guy who got carried by a stacked roster and a friendly schedule. This was a rookie who took a franchise that had been an afterthought for the better part of 2 decades and dragged them all the way to the NFC Championship game. That run wasn't a fluke bounce here or there. It was a legitimate, sustained stretch of elite quarterback play against real competition, including an absolutely electric divisional round performance against the Lions that Commanders fans will be talking about for years. That is the version of Jayden Daniels this list is pointing back to, and honestly, that is the version this list is betting will show back up in 2026. So where does that actually put him among the league's true elite? If you're being fair and objective about it, you'd probably slot in a tier that starts with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Matthew Stafford, and then right behind that group, you've got Jayden Daniels standing shoulder to shoulder with guys like Justin Herbert for that next spot down. That's not some wild homer take. That's a top 7, maybe top 8 quarterback in the entire league based on what he actually showed us when healthy. And here's the part that should really get people fired up. The man who covers this team as closely as anyone, John Keim, has said on his own podcast that everyone inside that building still believes Jayden Daniels is that guy. Not used to be, is present tense. The people who actually watch this quarterback every single day at the facility are not remotely worried about him. It's only the outside noise, the national talking heads who catch a handful of highlights and build an entire narrative off it, who keep trying to write him out of the conversation. And speaking of that outside noise, let's actually walk through it, because it makes ESPN's 3 first-round pick number look even more significant by comparison. Every single major outlet has run its own quarterback rankings this offseason, and the treatment of Daniels across the board has been rough, to put it kindly. Take the executive poll that ESPN itself put together separately, gathering opinions straight from front office people and general managers around the league. Josh Allen at number 1, Patrick Mahomes at 2, Matthew Stafford at 3, Joe Burrow at 4, Lamar Jackson at 5. Dak Prescott at 6, no Daniels yet. Justin Herbert at 7, still no Daniels. Drake May at 8, still nothing. Jared Goff at 9. Caleb Williams at 10. And Jayden Daniels doesn't show up until 11, tucked in right behind a group of honorable mentions that even includes Sam Darnold ranked ahead of him. Think about that for a second. Sam Darnold, ahead of Jayden Daniels according to a poll of actual league executives. It doesn't stop there either. Ran their own rankings, and the pattern repeats itself. Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Mahomes, Stafford, then Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Drake May, and Brock Purdy rounding out that top 10. Still no Daniels. He finally shows up at 12, 1 spot behind Trevor Lawrence, 12th. That is the number the analytics community has been comfortable slapping on a guy who dragged this franchise to a conference championship game as a rookie. And then CBS Sports put out their own version, with Stafford at 1, Mahomes at 2, Allen at 3, Jackson at 4, Burrow at 5, Hurts at 6, Darnold at 7, Caleb Williams at 8, Bo Nix at 9, and finally, Daniels squeaks in at 10. So when you actually line all of that up, side by side, you start to understand why the ESPN valuation piece landed the way it did. This has been a full offseason of national outlets quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, positioning Jayden Daniels as a fringe top 10 guy at best, a talented but unproven player who might have caught lightning in a bottle for one special stretch. And then Bill Barnwell comes through with a completely different lens, one that isn't about last year's box scores or reputation momentum, but about actual acquisition value. What would you genuinely give up to get this player on your roster today? And by that measure, Jayden Daniels doesn't just crack the top 10. He's valued above a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Jalen Hurts. He's right there mixing it up with names like Caleb Williams, who came in at 4 picks himself. That's not solid young quarterback territory. That's franchise cornerstone that other teams would move heaven and earth to acquire territory. And look, this all comes back to something much bigger than one list from one writer. This is about what this organization actually has under center and how badly the national conversation has undersold it. Think about where this franchise was before Daniels arrived. Years of instability, years of ownership drama, years of watching other quarterbacks in other cities get the benefit of the doubt while Washington cycled through one disappointment after another. That's not the reality anymore. This team has a legitimate blue-chip quarterback, a guy who, when healthy, gives this roster a puncher's chance against literally anybody on the schedule. It doesn't matter if it's a trip into Arrowhead against Mahomes or walking into that new stadium in Buffalo to face Allen. Jayden Daniels has already shown on the biggest stage this franchise has seen in a generation that he can go blow for blow with anyone, including exactly what he did to the Lions in that unforgettable divisional round win. And here's the thing people conveniently leave out of the injury conversation. Yes, Daniels missed time last year. Nobody's pretending that didn't happen. But this wasn't some chronic, recurring issue. This wasn't a guy who's been fragile his whole career. Last season, frankly, the whole roster got hit with bad injury luck, not just the quarterback position. It was an unlucky year across the board for this team's health. Full stop. That doesn't erase what this player is capable of when he's actually on the field and the pieces around him are healthy too. And that's exactly the bet ESPN's number seems to be making. Not that last year was some magical, unrepeatable anomaly, but that the ceiling shown in 2024 is the real baseline. And this year is the chance to prove it all over again. So take a step back and look at the full picture here. Every major outlet, every executive poll, every analytics darling has spent the offseason quietly nudging Jayden Daniels toward the middle of the pack, treating him like an afterthought compared to the league's so-called elite. And then one of the most respected writers in the business puts out a completely different kind of number, one built on pure value and upside rather than reputation, and suddenly Daniels is sitting above a Super Bowl quarterback and right in the mix with some of the most hyped names in football. That's not a coincidence, and it's not some outlier take from a guy chasing engagement. That's a signal that the people who actually study this stuff for a living haven't forgotten what they saw in 2024, even if the rest of the football world has been busy trying to talk themselves out of it. If you're a Commanders fan who has spent this entire offseason biting your tongue through every disrespectful list, every "Is Jayden Daniels a fluke" segment on national television, this is the receipt. Print it out, screenshot it, bring it up the next time somebody tries to tell you your quarterback isn't the real deal. Because according to at least one of the sharpest analytical minds in the business, Jayden Daniels isn't just good. He's a top-tier, franchise-altering asset, worth more draft capital than a Super Bowl champion. And this fan base has waited a long, long time to have a quarterback worth talking about that way. All right, that's going to do it for this one, but before you head out, I need your help. This channel is closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and if this kind of breakdown is exactly the content you want more of heading into training camp, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single update. If you're already locked in, do me a favor and smash that like button on the way out. It genuinely helps this channel reach more Commanders fans who need to see takes like this. And I want your honest reaction down in the comments. Do you think 3 first-round picks for Jayden Daniels is fair, too high, or, honestly, still too low? And what about Lamar Jackson only checking in at 2 picks? Let me know exactly where you land on all of this. Hail to the Washington Commanders. I'll see you all in the next one.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.